well for demo. So, and Jim, thanks for having me come to do this. I was telling Jim at the break, this is the first RARC meeting I've ever been to, and I'm impressed by the attendance in July. So it's either just a happening place to be, which Jim kind of makes it sound that way, or it's a hot topic. Right? You could lie to me and tell me that it is.
It is, Jay.
Yes,
it's all you, brother.
All right, that's good.
I told them you were coming and they flocked here.
Yeah, okay. All right.
That's it.
All right. But so anyway, I'm happy to be here, and my role tonight, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what DMR is, what the mode is about, so just some background history on it, that sort of stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the DMRVA repeater network, which I help run, and some of those details. And we've got some hardware for you to look at, both portables. I've got mobiles in the parking lot. If anybody's really interested, I've got one. And this is a pretty typical repeater that we'll go over as well. And Julian, did you get this from the Hard Rock? I just have to ask.
It came with the carrier.
Oh, did it? Okay. I didn't know if you had interfaced it to the repeater yet or not. So, I will. Can you guys hear me all right in the back? Can you hear me all right? Good. Okay, good. So, I will probably use. I'm going to shut everything down. I will probably. Let's the other presentation. Can I just go ahead and run yours too?
No, don't run that.
No. Okay. All right. So I will probably use the term DMR and Moto Turbo interchangeably for all intents and purposes in amateur radio. They are pretty interchangeable. Moto Turbo is the Motorola trademark for DMR. So if you hear somebody talking about one, they're probably talking about the other. In the commercial world, yeah, there could be some slight differences in it. So who in the room plays with this mode already? All right? Good smattering of folks. Who's interested in it? Who's like, I might want to play with this? Okay, good. All right, just a show of hands, who uses any digital voice mode? Anybody? Okay. All right, so good. And just a little background on me and digital modes too. Despite what Jim says, I'm not an expert at any of this. I'm a guy that likes to have a good time with the radio. But I have been playing with this stuff really since, I don't know, like I said, 2009, 2010. But I started playing with P25 probably 15 plus years ago. And me and some other ham buddies would get on UHF P25. We'd talk to each other. And it was super cool because, no one could hear you. Okay, that was like 1999, before P25 scanners were a real thing. But we also kind of learned some of the lessons about how digital modes function and, what the value of error correction can be and those sorts of stuff. Obviously, your club, you guys have an appreciation for digital modes because you put the first digital stuff in the air in town. And D-Star I played with a little bit as well, so I can, if you want to compare, ask questions about this mode have this feature, I might be able to navigate some of that stuff too. DMR's been around for over 10 years, so it's really not a new mode. It's an ETSI standard. ETSI is a European technical standards group, so it's kind of genesis from the Europeans, and it uses TDMA, which we're going to spend a little time and zero in and talk about what TDMA is. Does anybody else have a TDMA radio in their pocket, perhaps? Anybody? Okay. Your cell phone. Some cell phones, some of the cellular networks, Jim's over here demoing one. Some cellular networks use TDMA, so it's not a new thing either. DMR was built, really wasn't built for the amateur world, imagine that. So it was built and created for land mobile radio, for hospitality, for construction, for business, for that sort of stuff. It is a spectrally efficient mode. When you key up on 146.52, plus or minus how wide is your signal? About how many kilohertz? All right, plus or minus about 5 kilohertz. So that's a standard wideband analog signal. Key up in DMR, it's a narrowband signal, 2.5 kilohertz wide. So it's spectrally efficient, not just because it's narrow, but because it uses time division, and you can pack a lot into that 2.5 kilohertz. This is an open standard, so you'll see some of the radios that JB, myself, and others in the room have. They're radios by several different manufacturers. Of course, up front, the big commercial names were making this stuff. Motorola, Harris, etc. I will say that there are radios available for, how can I say this? All sorts of how can I say this? It's about having a church. There's radios available for cheap hams. There's radios available, you know, kind of intermediate, so you can buy under $100 on occasion. You can get into this stuff. You know, this is not what it was a few years ago, where you had to have the latest and greatest commercial gear. The stuff has evolved. The Chinese are helping us grow this mode a little bit. But you can also, you know, still, if you want the latest, greatest commercial gear, you can spend several $100s to get into stuff. The error correction in this mode is pretty decent. For those of you that have experienced D-Star and some of the R2, D2 style stuff, it's not a prominent thing in DMR. So I would say audio error correction is much better. And another just thing I think is important about DMR is it's under ongoing development. I guess that's a good way to put it. Manufacturers will release new firmware for radios that are out. There's still new hardware coming out today. JP brought some dual band radios that have been out just a few weeks. So this is not something that is stagnant, even though it's been around for a few years. So that's kind of a high-level overview of things. You will hear occasionally, yes sir.
Talk loud.
Sure. You'll occasionally hear people talk about tiers of DMR. For all intents and purposes, all you need to know is that we're in Tier 2. Tier 1 was stuff that was developed for sort of the digital FRS for Europe. Tier 2, simplex repeater communications, which is 99% of what the amateur world is doing. Tier 3 is trunking, a lot of data, messaging, which I suppose we could do, but it's generally not applied. For amateur utilization, this stuff really took off in the big cities right away. Schaumburg, Plantation, Florida, some of the places where hams work for the commercial shops. So they started putting up repeaters and networking them together. So currently there are international repeater networks, sort of regional repeater networks, and you know, all sorts of flavors. So little local, you know, 2 or 3 repeaters tied together. And then the large open network right now that you probably hear a lot about if you're interested in this stuff is Brandmeister. But there is literally dozens upon dozens of other networks within DMR to play with. And like I said, some of them are specific to certain regions or certain interests and that sort of stuff. And hotspots, which JB is really going to focus in on, has really changed this, because before hotspots came along, this was, you know, very much a mode you would use simplex to talk to people, or you talk to people on a specific repeater network. Hotspots definitely give you a high degree of flexibility when it comes to things. So just a little bit more, just data and numbers and so forth. There are over 56,000 registered users in the big international DMR database. So that's, you can look at that a couple different ways. That's 56,000 or so radios that are on the network. So, you know, some of these radios might have different IDs. But plus or minus, there's about that many hams that are playing with this. In over 71 countries, over 3,800 repeaters using the DMR mode. I put my first repeater on in about 2010. I put the second one on in the state. There's probably close to 25 or so right now. And we, in 2014, Fred kind of helped move things along, and we put one up at the W4RAT site, which is sort of wide coverage. Since then, there's 2 more in town. There's one sort of west, 288, and what would you say, on the river right there. It's a good way to put it. It's in Goochland technically, and then there's one in downtown Richmond as well. So there's already 3, well 4 technically, if you want to count Petersburg as well, here in Metro Richmond. Plus, plenty of people at home playing with hotspots, you know, talking all over the place, at home or in the car, as you'll hear about. So it has evolved and grown in really a short order in the amateur world. TDMA, I think, is the defining feature of DMR, right? TDMA is time division multiple access. And what this does is this allows, in that 2.5 kilohertz piece of the spectrum, it allows 2 voice conversations to occur at the same time. We kind of state that a couple different ways. Me and JB are talking on a repeater, all right, a regular analog repeater. Pick any analog repeater on the planet. We can talk back and forth, okay? He drops the key, I can key up. Or we can put a group on that analog repeater. Everybody follow me so far? All right, that's pretty normal behavior, what we think of traditional, conventional repeaters in amateur radio. With a DMR repeater, using DMR, using this mode, JB and myself can talk on one time slot. 2 other people or 3 other people or whatever can talk simultaneously on the same frequency using slightly different parameters. But you can have 2 completely separate conversations going through a repeater at one time. And DMR is a mode that does that. P25 phase 2 for any of the scanner heads in the room. P25 phase 2 does that. That's not implemented in amateur radio though. It takes something. So let me just pause here and make sure that I haven't lost anybody. If I have, I'll try to clean things up.
So, clarify, if you have those 2 conversations, people in one conversation are not hear people in the other.
That's correct. So, right. So if you're in a conversation with someone, and I'm in a conversation with someone, I might know you're there. Like my radio might give me a visual indication, but no, we're not interfering with each other. So the radio is rapidly switching on and off, all right, somewhere in the neighborhood of the milliseconds, so that things are timed just properly. So it's not multiplex, no. But so there's a specific segment of time that you're going to occupy. There's a specific segment of time that I'm going to occupy, on the same frequency simultaneously. So I said it was spectrally efficient because it was narrow. This is the other piece of it being spectrally efficient. So you can pack a lot of people, you can pack a lot of QSOs into a lot of space if you need to or if you want to. Another benefit of this, and I think this is pretty cool, all right, so if your radio is switching very rapidly, your battery life is also a lot better if you're using a portion, right, because it's only transmitting 50% of the time that it would be. Now, if you put your radio in analog and you use it, guess what happens to your battery life? It's going to decrease. This also contributes to audio performance as well, using time division. Has anyone ever put their cell phone like near their computer speakers, and you hear some popping, you hear some pulsing? That may be some of the time division that is used in some of the modern cellular technology. That may be that. So. All right, let's scoot along. Typical hardware. So I touched on this already. There are radios that you can buy on Amazon, literally under $100 to get into this. They're capable on the digital mode. They're also capable of analog. So maybe you're like, I'm just not sold on this. I like analog, but I want to play with this. Good for you. You can definitely do that. Probably the most popular radio that's out there right now is the TYT MD380, which we've got a couple on the table, and it's pictured up here, the Titera radio. What do you see these for? I know you look at this stuff.
$85, $90.
$85, $90. On the high end of things, some of the commercial gear, I think brand new, $600, $700. And I also want to tell you that a lot of this hardware, a lot of the typical stuff that you see out here, it's not your typical Yaesu, ICOM, Kenwood, have a VFO type stuff. You have to program most of this with a computer, most of it, not all of it. And there is a learning curve when it comes to getting set up, programming your radio. That's part of the journey, is what I like to tell people. It's not a radio you're going to take out of the box, peel the plastic off, and go to town with. There's going to be a little warm up, acquaintance period where you've got to get to know each other a little bit and kind of move things along. But I would say the TYT, the Titera radio, is probably the most popular that you hear right now because of the price, because of the hackability as well. People are doing all kinds of custom things with them. So I wouldn't look at this and go, man, commercial gear, programming with PCs, that's not my thing. Give it some thought anyway. Until recently, they were really only single band radios that were out there. And in the past few months, some dual band VHF, UHF radios have started to appear. Throughout the country, most of the DMR repeaters have been UHF. There's several reasons for that. You know, some areas of the country, they don't have a lot of VHF pairs, but I think a big reason was that Motorola pushed all this stuff out. The first offerings they pushed out were UHF. So they pushed out UHF repeaters, UHF mobiles, and portables, and I think people caught on to that. But so you'll see, and plus, I mean, in our amateur spectrum at UHF, we've got a lot of room. We've got a lot of room to play with. And you know, in the commercial UHF side too, there's more room than VHF. So a lot of this happens on 440. Some places in the country, not here, there's some VHF. So this is what some of the stuff looks like, some of the stuff that you'll see. A typical repeater setup is honestly sitting here, sitting right here, and this is Julian's portable repeater that he put together that is on our local network that some of you may have used in Special Olympics or heard about. I encourage you to take a look at it, but this is it really. And the repeater, for those of you up front, is really just this piece in the bottom. That's it. And it's a 50-watt continuous duty repeater. He brought the small dummy load tonight also. This has a network connection to our repeater network that I'll talk a little bit as well. Duplexer, cellular modem, that's how it's making the network connection, and a little router in here as well. Is there anything else you want me to zero in on here?
Repeater can be operated AC/DC. I have not bridged because all the rest of this is run through 110 volt power supplies. I haven't bridged the other DC power supplies here, so I'm working on that. I got Jay has really helped me out a lot with this. I've got batteries for it. I got to get the cable, so it's kind of still work in progress. Been quite a bit of demand for this little machine over the last 2 or 3 months, this being one of them. We've got several groups that are interested in putting DMR up. I've enjoyed putting it together, and I do anticipate putting another one together. Hopefully by this time next year I'll have another box. It may be a little bit taller. It'll initially be battery operated, and it automatically charges the batteries. So I'm involved in Aries, so MCOM is kind of my drive, and I can drop this at a field somewhere, or on a trailer, or somewhere, on a tower, or wherever, and either plug it in the wall or just run it off batteries. So that's kind of where my go-to was. And other than that, the technology worked every time ever since I plugged it in. So I'm real happy with it.
Matter of fact, tomorrow, if you don't mind, we're going to take it to a repeater site tomorrow just to do some demo, put it on an antenna, and just kind of see what performance would be like. So I mean, you've created a heck of a niche by putting this hardware together. So I appreciate it. So let me talk a little bit about the repeater network that we've built over the last year, 18 months. There's about 10 repeaters across the state. It's called DMR VA. Kind of intuitive name that we came up with, real creative. This is roughly what coverage looks like in the state. So you can, certain areas, if you're driving, you can pretty much seamlessly talk from one, part of your travels to the other. With all propagation prediction, you're going to have holes in coverage. So anyway, the repeaters that are on the air, there's one here in Richmond, one in Petersburg, one in Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, one in Linden, which is just near Front Royal, covers Winchester real well, Roanoke, there's Wallops Island, DC, and the portable box, I count as number 10. We've got a couple of other groups in the state that are sort of exploring, plugging into this network. And it's just a repeater. Like if you've been on a linked repeater system, analog linked repeater system, it's kind of how this works. It's not a club, it's not a group. It's just a bunch of, again, it's just guys that want to plug in their stuff and have common interests. So this network, while it's Virginia focused, it does allow you to talk, in the state, locally, as well as beyond. It has connections to outside the state as well. Hopefully, we have plans right now to put something on the air in Fredericksburg in August, September. So that'll be the next one.
What's that on the eastern shore there?
That's Wallops Island, the NASA facility.
Oh, okay.
There's a guy who works there.
Ball was.
Yeah, there's one on the post there at the Wallops Flight Facility.
So if you're out on the Chesapeake on your sailboat, can you get any?
If you're in the right spot there, I imagine you could. Yeah.
But it's not bridged everywhere. So you need one in Delta.
I would love to have one in Delta. I'd love to have one.
Okay.
If you know a guy.
Just a point that this shows the DMRVA network, but there are DMR repeaters in South Hill, Martinsville, Mountain Lake, Whitfield, Fancy Gap that aren't on this network, but most of them, some of them link to DMRVA, the satellite talk group. Leave any out? There's
I would just add, the state of North Carolina has built South Carolina has built a significant link system over the last 5+ years. NCPRN, and we used to have a repeater on there. Well, we're still connected to those guys, but 40+ repeaters across their state. So they do a heck of a job.
North Carolina has the second largest group of DMR users in the nation, second only to California. And Florida's catching up, but I think North Carolina had a big head start on most of the groups.
It's not a commercial for the repeater network, but if you want info about DMRVA, it's dmrva.org. And one of the more useful things you may find is what was up here a little bit ago, which is the last heard list. So this shows you traffic that's passing through the network. So you can see, like this is the guy that's talking in a LVR, this is the guy that's talking now. You can someone key up on the portable repeater? You will also see, let's see, so there's Julian keyed up on the portable repeater. His signal strength is -75 dBm, so not too bad. Not too bad. Oh, can you do that again? There you go. Dave, can you drop the squelch on this thing?
KB4,
Turn it.
Which knob?
KB4, Iron 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's audio. Do it again here.
Just make a noise.
Who broke it?
Well, he got into the receiver at actually, what are you on, 445.8, right?
I'm got 440, 800.
445.8. So this is what you'd expect to hear it sound like. So we're listening in FM, but you can hear the pulsing of it, keying on, keying off, very rapid.
Well, you sure talk fast on the radio.
I'll just talk just for a second about programming. If you program your new Wu-Tang, Baofeng radio that you buy at Hamfest, and you program it for a local repeater, the parameters you need input frequency, output frequency, PL tone, right? That's generally what you need to program up an analog repeater. A little bit more extensive list in the digital world. You still need some of that. You need your input frequency, you need your output frequency. You need what's called a color code. All right, and there's color code range from 1 to 15. Color code is sort of like it's like a PL tone, if you will. It's your interference eliminator, your selective squelch type parameter. If you want to know what color goes with what color code, I don't know. I'm still looking for that list. You need to know what time slot you're operating on, because remember my example from earlier, you can have two groups simultaneously. So you've got to be on the, set up on the right time slot. There are several million talk group IDs or talk paths to choose from. So those are the basic things that you have to program per channel. So just wanted to share that as well. All right, myths about this, and then I will shut up for a little bit. Is it legal to use this mode in the ham band? There was some questions about this. It was not explicitly defined in the FCC rules. This mode was not. And there was some QST, write-ups about it, and nothing ever pops up on QRZ.com that's controversial, of course. So there was a lot of discussion in the ham world, the Twittersphere, and everything else about it. It is legal to use this mode. And eventually, the FCC did come forward and explicitly define it as being legal. Can I convert my analog radios to this mode? Generally, no. All right, your analog portables, no. Can you hack some of your gear to, put together a repeater? There are ways to do some of that, yes. But if you want to get in and experience this mode, you got to get some new hardware. Do I have to buy my own programming software, cables? What's the story with that? This is another thing I always try to encourage hams. Don't let that stop you. If you really want to, if you really want to buy XYZ radio, whether it's a DMR radio or something else, you probably know somebody, right? If you don't want to do it yourself, you probably know somebody. Maybe some people here, and so I love when somebody brought up earlier, hey, maybe we need to have some, clinics on how to program radios or, that sort of stuff, because that's a part of the hobby now. It is. So do you have to buy your own programming software? First of all, a lot of the programming software for the entry-level stuff is free or very cheap. The programming cables, they're pretty cheap in the big picture. We think
$10.
$10, $20, some of them.
$10 for a Connect system.
Right.
And the software is free, and your upgrade is regularly, and so is the firmware.
Exactly.
So
So,
somebody like me can do it.
right, Julian pulls it off, right?
I can do it
There you
anyway.
go. We'll just talk to other digital modes, all right? I'm sure this is something we'll get to at some point tonight. So if you have your D-Star radio, you have your DMR radio. The only way they're going to talk to each other natively is in what mode? Analog, okay? Now, network side of things. So there's giant networks that support both DMR and D-Star, right? The network side of things, yes, there are some interconnects. But if you're standing at the Hamfest, and Jim's on his D-Star radio, I'm on my DMR radio, and Fred's on P25, we are out of luck, right? Unless we have planned to be on it. All right, that's sort of my basic intro to the mode, to the repeater network, etc. Anything I can clean up before I pass things along to JV for the next phase tonight?
Yeah, hey, what's the one best digital mode?
How much time do you have, Jim? Yes, sir.
So for those of us that haven't dived into this yet, the question is going to be, what am I sacrificing when I buy a cheap radio?
Well, you're definitely sacrificing $80 and maybe, an extended wait from China if you buy it from China. What are you sacrificing? One of the across-the-board complaints, limitations of having 4 or 5 different vendors' radios on the system is audio is going to vary. So let's say you put 4 or 5 guys on a channel that are using the same radio type with the same firmware version. Probably they're going to sound similar. They're going to sound pretty similar. Their audio levels will be relatively similar. So now I'm using my radio that's 5 years old. I haven't updated the firmware since I pulled it out of the box. Dave is using a radio that he salvaged out of a storage unit. You're using an $80 Chinese radio. Julian's, I don't know where yours came from. We probably ought not to talk about that. But so that is where some of the computing in the background can get. So what you can have is Julian will be really loud. Okay, Dave, he'll be lower. His audio level will be a little bit lower. So this is definitely one of the things. And so you got a group of guys talking. And every time Julian talks, I got to turn the volume down. But
I actually experienced that at the special.
Okay.
Turn it up and hear somebody, and then
Yeah.
the next guy will just.
Next guy will blow you out. So that is it's a limitation. It absolutely is.
So is that a reflection of the cheap radio, or are you just talking about the difference in band and difference in manufacturing?
I think it's a little bit of both. I can tell you, 7, 8, almost 10 years ago now when I started playing with this stuff, everything was, you know, pretty neutral as far as what firmware, what hardware, and it wasn't an issue. And as things have evolved, other radios, you know, slightly different code have arrived. You know, you can definitely, you can pick out some guys and go, that's a CS700. You know, oh, that guy's using an MB380. You know, you'll pick this stuff up. Do you agree, George?
I think so.
Yeah. You know,
Let me add that in some respects you really do get what you pay for. The TYT Titera is the cheapest radio that you can buy for DMR that's decent. But there are some hams that have hacked the firmware and made some improvements. But TYT is not known for its programming software or its firmware. And if some hams had not have jumped in and hacked that radio, it wouldn't be popular. The programming software really lacks from the standpoint that with the more higher price software, you can import and export out your contacts and your frequencies and things like that. Sort of like a chirp type of interface to program it. With TYTs, you get what came with it, and they're not likely to upgrade it anytime soon. They may once every year or 18 months, they may do a minor update, but pretty much the MD380 is last year's news, and don't expect to see them do many updates to that radio going forward. And at the price that you pay, you know, they're not making much money anyway.
That's very true. I'm going to do just one last
Go ahead.
I'm just going to do a little demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on one channel. So it's called our statewide channel. I'm going to just call and see if I can get somebody to answer. So maybe somebody will, maybe somebody won't. Usually somebody's listening. It's getting a lot of use here lately. George went to the back of the room. Julian and him, they're going to talk. Sorry? You might get on the portable if you have that. Do you have the portable in there? What I'm going to try to do. That's fine. You can do that. I'm going to try to demonstrate, you know, two QSOs going on at the same time within the same piece of RF spectrum. So let's see if anybody answers me, and see if you guys can get going as well. This is KD4 BPZ. On statewide. Looking for a demo. Anyone listening to statewide? Kind of demonstrate the audio quality also. So I'm talking through this repeater here. Sometimes no one's listening, you know. It does happen. Don't you hate it when that happens? Even when you tell guys, hey, I'm doing a demo tonight, I'll be on the radio. 84 BPZ on Virginia statewide, looking for any station anywhere for a demo. That's some echoes, that's good. So I'm getting out.
I think it's just
Hey Andrew, good evening. I'm at the Richmond Amateur Radio Club meeting doing your presentation on DMR, and just would like for you to tell everyone your name, where you're located, and how you're getting into the network. Back to you. Can y'all key up? Maybe occupy things, or is it more local?
Sure, this is Kilo 4, Sierra Hotel Oscar.
Demos are fun. I hear them coming out of your radio, not out of mine. So, okay. I think his signal may be a little low. So this guy I talked to on the regular, it's Andrew in Charlottesville. So he's probably coming through the repeater that's in Charlottesville. It's interesting though that we're in the middle of trying to demonstrate it. You can hear it coming from some places and not from others. So it's still radio no matter how you look at it. Is that somebody else in there?
Yeah, I've got mine on stand. I was on DCI.
Okay, gotcha. Andrew, I appreciate it.
Andrew, I appreciate it.
Thank hop back into things. So you do hear that digital delay, right?
That's real reserved for one. More and then
So there's a bigger, there is a slight delay in there, as opposed to what we normally used to with some of the other digital modes like D-Star.
Actually, all the
Like, you drop it in and it's almost continuous back and forth.
Well, all the digital modes have that delay. Every single digital one of them.
Yeah, one of the reasons you're having a delay is we've got 4 or 5 radios on that are connected to different networks and different repeaters, and all of them introduce some sort of delay. So it sounds like almost an echo, but it's a delay. If in a normal conversation, you wouldn't hear any kind of delay.
I would agree with Fred that every digital mode I played with, from Fusion to P25 to DMR and D-Star, have some element of a delay as well.
Yeah, I can't see probably. While Jay's doing that, and about 3/4 of the way through, there was a title slide for hotspots. While Jay sort of reloads this thing, I'll sort of explain how I got into hotspots. You know, we all go through phases in our ham radio career, and back in about 2003, my wife and I downsized, so I went from a house that had 4 HF contest stations in it to a house that had a little corner of the bedroom with a station in it. And so I sort of migrated more to VHF, UHF, although I had played with that for years. And I got interested in DMR. I bought a radio in about 2014 when the Richmond repeater went up, and enjoyed it. In fact, I enjoyed it so much I took my analog dual band out of the car and put it in the box, and it's still in the box. They didn't really, didn't have many people to talk to anyway on the repeaters at that point in time. So had a good time on DMR for a couple of years. Then in 2015, my wife and I decided to move out of Richmond and move to Appomattox. And lo and behold, I didn't have anybody to talk to because my radio wouldn't hit a repeater. And there was a repeater on the air at Wintergreen shortly there after I moved. And you know, on a good day, if the wind was blowing right and they had an external antenna and I was on the top of a hill, I could hit the repeater. And somebody told me about maybe I need to get a hotspot. And so I did a little research, and I decided to spring for one. And talking to Fred one night, he had sprung for a DB4 Mini at the same time that I had bought something else. And so from that point on, I've been running hotspots because it's still not a repeater that I can hit.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm in the one place in Virginia which no RF gets in and out, I think. But that's especially DMR. But you know, I've learned a lot about hotspots over the last couple of years, and so skip down in the slides until we get to the hotspots. It's way down. You might have to run for a while. This is part of a larger presentation, and I only have a couple hundred slides, so I'll try to make it fast. Not really, but when we get down here a little bit, we will keep going. Right in there. All right, skip on. Next slide. Well, we don't have it projected yet. Display. See it on the screen. Yeah, details. Function something. Right. He's going to get to the right slide now. Slide 43. See, if I'd have started tonight, we would have been back on number 10 or whatever. Okay. What is a hotspot? It's an electronic device that connects your radio to a network. And generally that's via the internet. Some hotspots can connect via RF, but typically we connect through the internet. Okay, next slide. So why a hotspot? Here's some questions for you to answer in your mind. Can you hit a DMR repeater or another digital repeater with an HT? Does your automobile trip usually last less than 15 minutes? Does a repeater you usually monitor have pretty active crowd on it? When you throw out your call in 2 minutes, does somebody actually answer you? Is emergency communication something you have interest in? If you answered yes to any of them, you might not want to. You may not need a hotspot. But if you answered, if you answered no to those, but those kind of things that mean you pretty much have all you need. You have a radio that will hit a repeater and it'll work fine. You don't need a hotspot necessarily, unless you want one. Next slide. So basically you have a low power transceiver in the DMR world that connects to a DMR talk group over the internet. And most of these hotspots support DMR, D-Star, C4FM, which is fusion, and P25 also. So you don't have to have a local repeater. Next slide. So, hotspots don't access repeaters radios do. One thing to remember, all hotspots are microcomputers that require digital radio compatible with the modes you want to operate. So if I want to use my hotspot with D-Star, I have to have a D-Star radio. If I want to use DMR, my hotspot with DMR, I have to have a DMR radio to go with it. All of the hotspots we're going to discuss tonight connect to the Brandmeister network. It's a set of servers that route conversations over the internet. Brandmeister really stands for brand new master, is what it in German. Most of the DMR development and activity actually takes place in Europe. Most of those guys come up with some really neat things, especially the hotspots and dual band mobiles and things like that. Hotspots can connect to reflectors for P25 and D-Star. Most of you who operate D-Star know what a reflector is. In DMR terminology, they are talk groups. And in fusion terminology, they're rooms. So everybody has a different word for the same thing. Next. So the first one I want to talk about is this guy right here. This is a DV Mega hotspot. I sort of entitled it the DV Mega Pi just to differentiate it. And it's a totally self-contained there. It's a battery, a Raspberry Pi, and a DV Mega device with an antenna stuck on top of it. Next slide. And so this is what the inside looks like. This little board's a transceiver, 10 milliwatt transceiver. Happens to be the dual band version of the board. They make a dual band and a single band. Unless you're going to have a VHF radio, I'm not sure anybody really needs to have the dual band, but if you operate digital with 2 meters, you might. It's 50% more expensive, but it's up to you. Then the Raspberry Pi down here, and of course a case to put it in. Next slide. Roughly you can, if you've got to buy everything from scratch, you're going to spend $190 for this device. It's basically a Raspberry Pi 203 with a DV Mega board. It supports DMR, D-Star, Fusion, and P25. It can connect through the internet through either Ethernet or Wi-Fi. I connect mine via Wi-Fi, and I run this mobile, so that's my mobile radio right there, one of them anyway. And if you have a Raspberry Pi 3, it has built-in Wi-Fi, so you can use its built-in Wi-Fi to connect to whatever hotspot or whatever you have. The cons is you may have to learn a little bit of Linux, depending on how much you want to control it. If you want to tinker with it, if you don't want to tinker with it, you're probably okay. You can follow the instructions on the internet and be up and running in a half hour or so. Like I said, $190 if you buy everything outright. Most hams have a Raspberry Pi in the drawer somewhere and save 40 bucks right there. If you've got a SMA antenna, dual band antenna, save another 6 bucks. So you can get the cost down. The actual DB Mega is $129, single band. Next slide. And the software is basically a Raspberry Pi image. And it is a file you load onto an SD card. Then it contains the Raspberry Pi operating system and the software for all the digital modes. And almost all of them have MMDDM server as the actual software for your digital mode. And then also additional gateways for each mode that you want to use. So the latest versions have a DMR gateway, a Fusion gateway, a D-Star gateway, and a P25 gateway. And you can turn each of them on and off. You can build your own image. I've been in the computer business for more years than I want to remember, and I think I'm a pretty decent Linux person, and I know my way around a Raspberry Pi, but I struggled for about a week to get an image up and running from scratch. And finally somebody told me, hey, why don't you download one off the internet and try it? And the first one I tried is the Utah image, KC7WSU, Chris Andrus image. I had run into him somewhere before, and I had his email address, so I emailed him one night when I was struggling. And he said, well, I just posted it on the internet for the guys in Utah to use. Maybe you want to download it. So he gave me the address, I downloaded it, and I put it in my files, put it on the Raspberry Pi, and it was up and running in about 15 minutes. So maybe you don't want to build your own, maybe you just want to get an image from someplace. The Utah image is still one of the more popular ones. I don't know, Fred, you still running that one? Fred, I gave Fred a copy, or you down?
I don't even want to, I did. I never brought up the Utah.
Oh, you never did the Utah?
Yes,
okay.
We're a novice, so it took us 2 weeks, but we got our own version.
Okay. All right. Well, later on, I really didn't like the way Chris did some of the things in his image. And so later on, I ran across KB5RAD, Russ's post on some bulletin boards, and I emailed him, and he sent me his image, which fixed a lot of the things that I was complaining about. So I ran that for about the last 6 months. And again, you download it, put it on an SD card, stick it in the Raspberry Pi, boot it up, and go into config and enter your call sign and such stuff like that. One of the advantages of Russ's image is if you have an MD380, it will allow you to do the MD380 firmware upgrades and the contact upgrades and everything else from the menu. You just pick upgrade firmware from the menu. It downloads the latest experimental firmware from the net, pops it onto your radio. And so that's if you got MD380s, that's probably a good image. But 3 weeks ago, I ran across this other image from Andy Taylor, not from Maybury, but from England. And it's really new, but it's all browser-based. Instead of having to get in with Linux and log in and whatever, you can just use your browser to go to your Raspberry Pi and go in and configure everything. So I've been running that for a couple of weeks, and it is rock solid. But I would recommend that you take one of these last two, the KB5RAD or the Pi-Star image, and use it if you're interested in using the DB Mega. You can Google either one of them and find a place for the download and instructions on how to use it and whatever. Next slide. Now, mobile, I still run this in my wife's car, mobile, because I just set this in the back of the car, and and my radio, and I have a full-featured mobile radio. I do need some way to get to the internet, so my phone has hotspot on it. So it just connects whenever I get in the car, and I talk. And it is, you do need some sort of battery. I picked one up for 15 bucks off of Amazon. Amazon, you can buy a lot of ham radio equipment there. But I use that. You can pre-configure your smartphone or your MiFi hotspot. That's what I'm using tonight, MiFi hotspot, to automatically connect when you turn the thing on. And the advantage of having the battery rather than plugging into the cigarette lighter is that you can continue to operate once the car is turned off. My car, you turn the switch off, the accessory plug goes away too. So I prefer to use the battery. Battery lasts me about 3 days on charge. Just sitting there running with incoming people all the time. It's always monitoring. I haven't found a battery yet that you can charge and use at the same time. There's some sort of mechanism in most of the lithium ions that prevent you from doing that. And that would be nice because I tried to figure out how I could do that, but it doesn't work. Next. So the second guide is the open spot. This is probably the most popular hotspot. It's fully self-contained, and it's slide, don't mind. It's about 250 bucks plus or minus, depending on where you buy it. But it comes with an antenna. It comes with, you just plug power cord in it and your Ethernet connection. It's great for the house. And I do run this particular one at the house. I was running my DB Mega. I had 2 DB Megas, in fact, and I was running both, one in the house, one in the car. So I bought this. And you really can't tell the difference between the 3 in operation. I mean, if you're talking to someone, they don't know you don't know the spot or the DB Mega or whatever. It's pretty much the same. You can take these mobile, but this is what you end up with if you want to go mobile. A bunch of wires. I'll show you this. Actually, this isn't all the wire you need, but the well, I won't plug it in. You need this router guide, and it's a little more hassle to take it mobile. Some people swear by mobile, do it, and they made fancy boxes to put it in to hold it and whatever. But I think that it's better suited for just having it in the house in your station. Here's what you need to do it. You need the open spots, you need a mini router. Here's a couple here that are known to work. If you can Google this information if you want. There's plenty of YouTube videos on how to make this work. You need a power source that runs both the open spot and the router, which means you need a battery with 2 connections on it, or 2 batteries, or 2 plugs in the car, and then the cables you need. Can be done, it's a little awkward. And if you need to get it working with your thumbnail, you can Google this, but you need to configure the router for repeater mode, and you have to put your phone on when you're configuring it, because the router insists it needs to find your hotspot. At that point in time, it sort of locks it in. And like I said, there's tons of videos on YouTube on how to do it, if you really want to make your open spot mobile. The other hotspot is blue spot. Mine's red, because I liked red. And I don't know what the color code is, but I had a choice of getting the blue or the red box, and so I took red. There's no Raspberry Pi here. It's a smaller hotspot. There's no Raspberry Pi. It's the least expensive of the solutions other than the DB4 Mini, which I don't really recommend people get. But if you have to buy it all, $172 for the BlueStack board and a DB Mega board. The software is free. I'll show you the software on the screen in a second, but I'm running it on a Windows PC here. Software runs on Android, iOS, Windows, and on Linux if you're really into that. Works with DMR, D-Star, and Fusion, all simultaneously if you'd like. It's The software is free and it was designed specifically for this particular combination. It also happens to work with a thumb DV, if you're familiar with that, for D-Star. And I've occasionally checked in the Richmond net. If you've heard me check in, I've actually been running a thumb DV with this software on a Windows 10 box. No radio needed. It runs almost anything. It's almost a perfect mobile platform. The one thing that's a problem is if you get a phone call while you're talking to somebody, you drop the connection. It's a carrier problem or more than anything else. You just can't keep it running for some reason. And right now, if you have an iPhone, you have a different board than the Android. They don't have one board to work both. D-Star will not work with Bluetooth BLE or low energy. That's basically the iPhone. You can't run D-Star on that particular hotspot on an iPhone. And like I said, if you get a phone call, it's a problem. So it's a combination of the DB Mega board, which is the same board used in the Raspberry Pi hotspot, $129 board, and the Blue Spot board, which the expensive one is $42.95. They make a $25 one. If you have an iPhone, it's about $50. It's $7 or $8 more. And you can connect it and control it with anything that has Bluetooth on it. Now, with a phone, you need wireless tethering on your phone as you do with any hotspot. But all the processing is done by the phone, software on the phone, and the DB Mega. There's no computer like a Raspberry Pi needed. It's slightly more expensive than the Raspberry Pi version because the hotspot, the Blue Spot board is about $7 more expensive. A little more elegant, a little smaller. Not any programming to be done on, no image to burn to an SD card or anything like that. If you have to buy everything brand new out of the box, the cost is pretty much dead even. Okay, next. So this is what it looks like in my car, the dash. No, not talking to anybody. There's nobody on the channel. It's listening. It's connected to my Bluetooth, and it's connected to Brandmeister. Next slide here. Here's a conversation. W4JWC, you might have heard Jerry on in the past, but there he is. It changes color, shows the call sign, his DMR ID, and a little more information. Now, the information you see on the screen is different depending on whether you're on an iPhone, an Android, or on Windows. It's just they have more room to work with on a big Windows screen than they do on a phone. So they put other things on it. This is what the Windows interface looks like that you have here. And you can see you have DMR, D-Star, and Fusion all supposedly running on this sort of demo screen. And you have a list of people that's been heard and a little bit more information and the ability to turn modes on and off on the side. And you can link and unlink your D-Star reflectors while you're going if you like to. Next. DB4 Mini, this was the first of the hotspots. Fred didn't have a very good experience, and nobody else I ran into had a good experience, so I avoided it like the plague. But it is the cheapest alternative. You do need to have a computer to plug it into to make it work. Next slide. Inexpensive, $129, but it doesn't include the antenna or the computer that you need. It supports all the protocols now. At the time I was looking into it, it didn't support some of them. D-Star was the one that was primarily supported at the time. The cons is that it requires a dedicated computer to be running it. It doesn't work with the Raspberry Pi 3, only the Raspberry Pi 2, which is hard to come by if you're a Raspberry Pi user. Setup can be a little challenging. It has a very poor reputation, and the early software and firmware didn't support Brandmeister, which is sort of a have-to. My understanding is they've gotten better about that. but I haven't had any experience with it in the last few months. So where do you get your hotspot? I buy everything from Amazon if I can.